where we intersect what I call resilience, purpose, and transformation. I'm your host, like I said, Michael Hicks, the host with the most and owner of Live to Thrive coaching agency, where we believe that thriving in life starts by reframing challenges. That's why you're on the podcast today. And I got a super important guest that I'm going to talk about here shortly. Their camera's off, and I'm not going to introduce them yet because I got some words from our sponsor. So if you're all about opportunities of growth, you stumbled on the great podcast, as I was stating to Chelsea, who's going to be coming on shortly, is we are streaming in 6 different continents. Thanks to all of you. Thank you so much. Continue to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll make sure to continue providing value to you on your growth journey. And so before I go any further, I would like to introduce some of our sponsors. Can't sleep, you got the aches and pains, you got to check out this CBD oil. I've been talking about this since the existence of the podcast, and it's a simple Amish tested proven formula CBD oil. What you do if you can't sleep, you've got the aches and pains, and we all know the importance of, and I did an entire podcast on the importance of sleep and how it can really affect our daily life, our relationships, etc. Is make sure you go ahead and check that out. You can get 50% off of any of these CBD oil. They come in 3 different sizes. Highly suggested. It's a little droplet. You take 9 drops, put it under your tongue, and you take that about 45 minutes before you go to bed. And I guarantee it works. And you're going to feel refreshed, energized, and ready to tackle the day. Sleep is one of the most important things as we age. And I am very much a component of that. And I speak highly about that. So if you want to get 50% off at checkout, all you got to do is go to superfungummies.com and type in new heights. That's all cap locks. Now, this is just for the CBD oil. I've had some of you reach out. There are other products on there as well, but this is just for the CBD product, and that truly aligns with the values and morals of what we represent here on this Framing New Heights podcast. And as many of you know, what is Michael Hicks, who he is. If you're just stumbling on this podcast, first of all, thank you so much. Send it to share, send it to 5 of your friends. Hit the subscribe button, as I talked about earlier. However, if you're just struggling, maybe you got direction loss, career fatigue, relationship issues, mindset struggles, learning to what there's something meant to be more in my life. Well, I have been working with my Live to Thrive coaching agency now for almost 3 years. On top of that, I've got about 25 years of experiencing individuals that are high achievers like yourself, like CEOs, superintendents, um, first responders, educators, lawyers, doctors that I've really helped align to become the best version of themselves. So if you truly feel like you have an empty pit on your stomach and you just think that you need to know more about your purpose and life and direction, well, you can simply start out by asking me to send a questionnaire to you. I can send you that questionnaire, and you can simply you can email me at michael@live2thrive.com. That's LIV, the number 2, and then thrive.com. I can send you the questionnaire. I can see if I'm a good fit and see if I can help create any of that lasting change. I always say this to anyone that works with a coach, and we all need coaches. The best individuals, the best people, the best anything have coaches. Coaches have coaches. If you don't have a coach, don't work with that person. Like literally, don't work with that person. I've got 3. I've got a life coach. I've got a personal trainer. I've got a therapist. Therapist really unpacks and does the trauma stuff. And I've got what I call a business coach right now that I am incorporating systems, which is so beneficial to my system. So with all that being said, if you truly want to create the change, that lasting change that you've been desiring and looking for, and I can really narrow that gap and allow me, then what happens is after you fill out that questionnaire, we get on a simple 1-hour journey call. If I can help align and fit those goals that you're looking for, a 1-hour free journey call. And then we really narrow out how I can narrow that gap to create the change that you've been looking for. All right. Without further ado, today I'm honored to welcome someone who embodies the spirit of resilience and innovation. Her name is Chelsea Thomas. Chelsea is the founder of, I'm super excited about this because Chelsea is the founder of Family in Flight, a nonprofit dedicated to reuniting geographically separated, or geo-batch, which I think these are some terms that I'm getting to learn, military families through travel grants and emotional support. As a military spouse herself, Chelsea knows firsthand the weight of separation, the emotional strain it places on marriages, kids, and the overall well-being and family dynamic. Instead of just enduring the reality, she decided to build something transformational. In fact, she has research that she has wished it existed. Her work has been recognized across the military spouse communities nationwide and featured in major local media outlets. Beyond her nonprofit leadership, Chelsea also thrives in the corporate event world, balancing career, motherhood to four amazing children. That's amazing. Three dogs. That's even crazier. And a unique reality of life with geo-batch spouse, which I don't know what that is, which we're going to talk about today. Chelsea, welcome to Framing New Heights. How are you?
Hello, thanks for having me. This is so great. I'm super excited to be here.
I want to kind of go and if you could just tell the listeners your personal story. So, kind of like give us your little brand of who you are, why you do what you do, and the gist. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. So I always like to joke when I'm telling this story because when my husband and I met, we were on a dating app and I worked near the military base and I swiped no on all of the military people because I was like, this life is not for me. I don't want this life. Like, absolutely not. And then I say all the time it was divine intervention that we are now married and have, four kids between the two of us. So that's a little bit about how my husband and I met, but we have been a military family for several years now. He is in the Air Force and we're super proud of him.
That's awesome.
But, going into the relationship, we knew that I was not going to be able to leave Florida, which is where we are because of custody of my kids. And that was a big deal for us. So we knew for a very long time that he was going to be restationed. It just was sort of a matter of where and what and all the details. So fast forward many years, he got restationed to Mississippi. And so now for the last 3 years, he has been living in Mississippi while two of our kids and I live in Florida.
Wow.
And it's been a journey to say the least. We started with flights all the time because flights were super cheap. So I was able to see him when my kids were with their dad. And then it became almost near impossible for flights. And I was driving, and it's about a 10 to 10 and a half hour drive each way. Um, and this was every week. So once a week I was driving up, and the following week I was driving back. And I was really mad one day, if I'm being honest. And I was really frustrated at the situation and just I think we were about 2 years in at the point, of this frustration of all the flights, all the travel, all the missed holidays, just all the things that come with living apart. And so that's where family and flight came into place. It came out of anger and has turned into something so much bigger than just me. It's this amazing organization that we have been growing and thriving in and helping other families. And so, you say you don't know the term geo-baching. Not many people do. And I didn't know it until about a year and a half in of geo-baching. It's not very well talked about. And so that's where, we come into play. We want to bring awareness to this because it's such a huge piece of so many people's lives who are in the military. And it's important, and there is no support and there is no community. And so that's where we come into play. So, I,
So,
yeah.
yeah, no, so let me just understand. So, your husband is in a different state. Now, do you have kids from a previous marriage, or is it just
Mhm.
and how many do you have from previous
Yeah,
marriage?
so we have 4 kids total. We are a blended family. So I had 2 boys from a previous marriage, and he had 2 girls from a previous marriage. And so our girls are currently, out of state with their mom full time because military, they never knew where he was gonna be or what was happening, and that
Wow.
was long before I came into the picture. And then, my kids and, their dad and I have 50-50. So that's where the whole custody issue comes into play. It wasn't worth fighting. It wasn't worth risking the healthy co-parenting relationship that we have to move and to, somebody give up a full year for school and the other parent gets all summer, whatever the situation may be. It wasn't worth it. Plus, for us, it was important to keep the kids' lives as consistent as possible, because divorce is hard enough on kids, let alone military. And we wanted to make sure that that was priority for us, and so my husband and I sort of said, "Okay, we're gonna put our marriage on the back burner, not that we're not gonna make it a priority when we can, but right now in this season of life, our kids will come first." And so that was how we made the decision for me to stay in Florida and for him to, move to Mississippi on his own.
How often do you see your husband then now through this process and your kiddos?
So Yeah, so I'm lucky and have realized that over the last year of working in this industry now that I am rare. So I see my husband every other week. So my kids go to their dad's and I drop them at school and then I head on up to Mississippi for the week and then I come back and I get my kids for the following week.
Oh,
So I mean it's every single week I'm driving
and it's a
10
10-hour
hours.
drive. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
my
so
poor.
give me like some clarity and understanding of how you now like the geo-batching. So that means you take military families and like blood, because you know what's interesting is I just had an interview with a woman, military too, that went, gosh, her story, it was the last podcast drop for any of your listeners that are checking this out. I think it's episode 147. Her name is Marlene Paris, and man, she lives in one state, the kids live in another. Like it's just been a nightmare. And it's interesting because, so talk to me. So is this program that you have, does it comp flights? Does it, like, what does it do? Break that down for us.
Yeah, so total transparency, I started this because I was frustrated about the cost of travel, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
naturally assumed that this must be an issue for other people in my situation. So for the first, I would say 6 months, almost maybe 8 months, we were solely focused on travel grants. We were focused on fundraising. We were focused on trying to provide financial assistance to people in this position. And when we launched our applications, nobody was applying, and we were like, "What? Like, who doesn't want free money?" It was a very weird situation. So we did a focus group. We pulled together several families who are in this position and asked them, "Hey, what do you need?" And collectively, they all came back and said, "We need community. We don't need the finance. We don't need the assistance. Half of us can't even do it. Our kids' schedules, or, we have medically needy children and we can't travel, or, whatever it was." And so we have shifted. So we still provide travel grants. I want to make that very clear. So if a family is struggling financially and they're like, "Hey, it's Labor Day weekend, it's Thanksgiving, it's whatever, and we want to go see our military member," we can help offset the costs or fully cover the travel. We
Oh,
do, flights, bus tickets, rental cars,
wow.
trains, planes, automobiles, all of it. You name it, we will do our very best to get the reimbursement for you. But then we have really shifted and have found a huge growth in community. And when I say that, a lot of people don't realize. So I am in Tampa, and so my husband is in Mississippi. So my military spouse support is in Mississippi. It is not in Tampa. And so I'm not tied to the base here. And so I have no military community. I have friends around, I have family, I have people around to help, but nobody in the military that
Mm.
might even slightly understand what we're going through. And so for us, geo-batching spouses, we want that community. We went from a very normal military life, very involved. When he would deploy, we would have all of these different events and spouse things and kid events and all of that to help support the spouses who were not deployed, and the families and all these free things that were so cool and great. And then we got put in this geo-batching position and we have nothing. Like military hardly even recognizes what we do. And so that's where we're really pulling in for community. So we have monthly support groups. We have
Oh,
focus groups where if you have a medically needy child, we're bringing in other nonprofits to help you navigate that world and what that looks like for you. Or we're bringing in financial counselors to talk about how do you budget 2 full homes, like that's a lot of money going out, and you got to feed your kids and all the things. And so we're bringing in these specialists to also talk to people to help just better navigate this world because it's not talked about. The military doesn't provide support. And honestly, we have yet to find another group out there that even provides remotely any slight support for geo-baching families either.
So you come to this crossroads, and you're like, "Gosh, this is just a lot." Through a divorced family, like, what was the turning point where you were like, "I need to create a resource for families that are like mine"? Like, you kind of shared in the beginning, but like, how many years ago did this happen? Like, kind of, can you tell us? And what was that? What was the turning point? Like, what happened?
Yeah, so, don't judge me, but I was on FaceTime while I was driving, and I was talking to my girlfriend, and I was, like, really upset. Like, I was really frustrated. I was leaving Mississippi. I didn't wanna leave my husband. I wanted to see my kids, though, so there's that struggle, talk about mental health and trying to push through. You're divided constantly,
Yeah,
and I was talking to her, and I was like, "There's gotta be something," right? Like, I was on the phone. I remember exactly where I was driving. Every time I drive by it, I'm like, "Wow, this was the spot where all of this came to be." And so, just talking to her, it sparked this idea, and I was like, "Well, maybe I can help people." And she was like, "You should. Like, you've been doing this for a year and a half, almost 2 years, and you know it in and out, right? Like, you've been doing it. You've done the flights, you've done the drives, you've done all of these things. You have kids at home, so you are a mom who's, essentially, I always joke that I'm a married single parent half the time because my husband isn't with me.
yeah,
And so talking with her, it was a very long call, and we just kind of came up with this idea. And I was like, great, I'm going to provide a nonprofit that does travel grants to help. And that's where I was saying that's how we started, right? It was all about the financial side of it. And so when I got home, I literally filed for the LLC that I think that night or maybe the next day. And I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly. I
yeah,
got my
yeah,
board together. I got all my ducks in a row. 501(c)(3) certified, all the things to make this possible for these families because it just sucks sometimes, you
yeah.
know? And so we've actually only been doing this a year. We just had our 1-year anniversary 2 weeks in August,
That's
August
awesome.
20th.
Yeah,
Um, and we have made such huge strides that have made me cry happy tears because I never thought that we would be here this
yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
Things on our 3 and 5-year plan have happened in year one.
Wow.
Um, and so it's just this, but I think that also goes to show how desperate this community is for community and support because
Yeah.
we're all by ourselves.
I read this statistic that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're going to know better, but as I was researching for our interview today, that nearly 43% of military families experience some form of geographic separation during a service member's career. And then, so a question from that is, from your perspective, what do those numbers actually feel like when you're living inside of them?
Isolating, but then it's wild because you go, well, 43%. And actually, I believe the most recent study that came out, it was up to like 62% or
Oh, wow.
61%.
Wow.
And I would like to make note that these surveys that are sent out, this is terrible, but I received 2 separate surveys from big military companies, and I didn't fill out either of them. And they're some of the most leading you know, places for stats, right? So you got to think that if you're getting 43%, 61%, like I said, I think is the most recent number, that is not including people like myself who didn't even fill it out. So I
Wow.
would like to say that these numbers are actually quite bigger. And so I say it's isolating because, again, the community is just not there. But then you look at that and you go, but there's 61% of other military families who've done this, and it's not even because those numbers typically don't include deployments because that's a very separate category. That is not the same as geobatching. That is a very different world, and we don't assist with anything in terms of deployments. We have amazing organizations that we partner with to help. If somebody does come to us for, hey, I need help during a deployment, great, here's a few organizations that we can lead you to because we don't do that. But yeah, so those numbers, I mean, it's hard to see on the inside, but then also as somebody who's the founder of a nonprofit, I'm excited because that means that many people have that many stories, that many people have survived
Yeah.
geobaching, like
How?
Not alone.
How do they find you? Like, how do they find you? Like, I'm sure there's people all across the world that are dealing with that
Mhm.
and then different. How do they find someone like Chelsea to get them? Like, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're all across social media. We're attending this year, we're attending two major conferences in the next, 2, 3 months of this fall of 2025.
Well,
So we're speaking at these events. And I think part of it is that the awareness piece is that, yes, surveys are starting to include the geo-baching numbers, but the military is not. So the military is not recognizing necessarily the geo-baching aspect. And so I think that for us, it's a huge uphill battle because again, there's not really other organizations out there who provide geo-baching support. The military doesn't necessarily recognize it. So we're climbing uphill trying to break our way through some of these like major military organizations who have a bigger and louder voice.
mm,
And but I mean, to find us, we're all across social media.
I love it.
If you're at any of these military conferences, you can almost guarantee that we're at them nowadays. So we're just really trying to be out there with everyone.
It's so when I was going over your bio and getting prepared, like I said, a lot of what you do really aligns with my Live to Thrive coaching agency and where we just don't survive challenges. Like, it's almost like we use them as catalysts, right? To like for bigger and better growth. And like, how has building family in flight been a transformation, not just for the families you serve, but for you personally? How, because I'm sure that you talked to earlier about happy tears. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it took a while. I used to run my own business many, many years ago. So I think I came into this going, hey, I can do this. Like, how different can it be? And oh boy, are nonprofits so different
Yeah.
than running a business. And I have an amazing board behind me. Like, I cannot speak highly enough about my board. And I think that that's genuinely how we are where we are today, is the people that I chose to join me on this journey. But we sit here and I took the first 4 months to get my ducks in a row. So we did no marketing, no social media, like nothing. We wanted to make sure everything was aligned and our mission and vision and values were clear and all of that stuff. And so coming off of that in January of this year, to think that we've been featured on the news, we've done interview segments, I can't even tell you how many podcasts we've been on. We've been on some major military blog websites. Just all of these things that like I was like, cool, if we can get one, I'll
Yeah.
be happy. And here we are, 15, 20 podcasts later, and I'm like, holy cow, this is insane. And so I'm not gonna say it's been easy. I have had a lot of happy tears, but I've also had a lot of frustrating tears because I used to be, I should say, a very private person, and, now my story is out there, and I feel a little validated because I know that I'm not alone, and it's very comforting in that aspect, but there's been times where I feel comforted knowing that I have this organization to post and be like, "This sucks leaving." Like, "This, I don't wanna leave," and that's okay to feel that way, like, when we are all in this position or flights are expensive and I have to drive. Or one morning I woke up with a flat tire as I was supposed to be driving to Mississippi, like just all of these things personally that have helped this organization and I think helped others, which is the priority, feel like they're not alone, like
Yeah.
to just know that it's okay to cry because you miss your spouse or, like it's okay to feel those big emotions out of nowhere.
I want to tap in because this is part of my framework from coaching is I want to talk about the emotional piece and even the distance on top of that. That's just it's a lot. And like whether it's emotional or physical, those things can really create walls in any type of relationships, right? I mean, we have walls that happen from people that live close together and I work with couples on that. But the thing I'm thinking about here is what are some of the most common emotional challenges you would say military couples like face? And if you could share that, with that, with relating it to the geo-baching as well.
Yeah, so I love that you brought this up, because this is my favorite thing to talk about of all time.
Okay.
So prior, and you mentioned it in your intro, and I was very excited about it too. In your intro, you talked about therapy.
Yes.
And so, as a military spouse, one of the biggest struggles that we have, at least that I have, and a lot of people that I know, is that there's so many unknowns. So, like, my husband has a fairly stable job, but there's still so many unknowns
Mhm, mhm.
of, are you doing a trip this weekend? Are you going over here? Whatever it might be, or the last minute changes. And it's frustrating. And I remember this when we lived together. And he would come home and be like, "Hey, I gotta leave in 2 days for a 2-week trip." And I'm like, "But we had all of these plans." And the military doesn't care about your plans.
No.
They need things done. And so, leading up to geobatching, because again, we knew that this was going to be happening for a while prior to it even taking place. We did couples therapy, and I have been in therapy for I can't even tell you how many years. I love therapy so much. I think it's the best thing ever created. And
Yeah.
so we joined a couples therapist, and she was phenomenal. And she told us, and this is the best advice we ever got, was have a vent container. And what that is, picture a Tupperware container. And this has saved my husband and I thousands of fights. Like he'll tell me, I'll be like halfway up to go see him, and he's like, "Hey, I got put on a trip this weekend." And I'm like, "I am 7 hours into this 10-hour drive, and now you're going to be gone 3 of the 7 days," and that's frustrating.
Yes.
But
Yes.
he is also frustrated, so I have to realize that. He also did not volunteer for this. There's a lot of things that are also out of his control. So in a situation like that, I will say, most of the time it's me, I will say vent container. And he knows that I am about to just let loose. Like, there is no rules, there
Mhm.
is no guidelines, and whatever I say, it's a very safe space that he knows I'm not judging him, I'm not mad at him, but I can say things like, "Your job sucks," and he knows he's not mad that I'm not mad at
That's
him
awesome.
for this job. And so it's this beautiful arrangement that I think is phenomenal to have in any relationship, honestly, because I get to go and say whatever I want, and he knows, within reason, you gotta still be nice about it, but he knows, "Okay, cool." And then he typically will be like, "Do you wanna talk about it, or do you just wanna vent about it?" And half the time, I'm like, "No, I feel much better now that I got it off my chest." But the key is, at the end of it, you have to say "vent container closed," and then you're done. And it avoids the fights. I get everything out that I need to get out. He has also done this previously, and it's just this amazing, tool that is in our little toolbox that has really helped us in geo-batching positions. However, I think that everybody can benefit from the vent container.
Yeah, I think that has to have a lot of trust. And if
Mhm,
you don't have the trust and the vulnerability from both ends, generally what I see happening just from in my coaching aspect is some couples, though, will attack the person and not
mhm,
the problem, right?
mhm,
I always share is like, okay, how can I get my significant other to win? That's what it
mhm,
is. But I think it's beautiful, or like even like a code word or something like
mhm,
that. And I think it's really, I think it's really impactful because that is vulnerability 101. And I teach men how to be able to do that. And I like what you alluded to as well. I always say I will instruct men because men, let's be frank, majority of them do not know how to listen in relationships because there's a great book out there. It's Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. I don't know if you ever read that
Yeah,
book, but
I
yeah,
have.
it's an incredible book, and it's so right. And I always say, if your significant other, from a male's perspective, if she's upset or something, honey, do you want me just to listen, or do you want my opinion? And I
Mhm,
said, majority of the time, the women just want to let it out and
mhm,
let it out, and they
yep,
do. And I love that you use that metaphor of that container, and that's amazing. Um, I want to pivot here and ask you. You know, research shows that deployment and even separation from divorce is hard, and they're linked to obviously higher stress levels, etc. You had talked about how it's harder on the kids, and I mean, we can even talk about how it increases depression and even
Mhm.
more behavioral challenges in children. How does family and flight then help kind of soften that ripple effect?
So I think that's where our monthly support groups and like those specialized other nonprofits that we're bringing in will help because, we're currently working with a psychologist right now to help create a plan for what's called reintegration.
Oh, that's good.
Meaning, so when the spouse comes back home, because eventually they will, and this can be applied for deployments, geo-baching, long-term trips, whatever it might be, and how to best navigate that. And so Family and Flight, we're trying to help that, the psychologist, the goodness, what else is there? The medical needs specialist, things like that to try and help the parent side. And eventually, within the next few years, we would like to have a kids support group. My kids are, they're getting older and they've done this for the boys have been doing this actively for 3 years. We went from living with their stepdad to stepdad's gone, and so eventually I would like to have something where the kids can get on and sort of just know that you're not alone. Like, my kids feel very alone, even my girls being up, out of state from all of us.
Yeah,
It's a very lonely thing because military kids is a whole different beast in itself. Like, there's a lot of amazing organizations that are dedicated to helping military children because of deployments, trips, mom and dad are gone or whatever it might be. And so we don't want to replace that. That's not our goal. But our goal is to help with, hey, geobaching is hard on kids too. Like, they adjust and they're okay, but it's still an absent parent, right? And
yeah.
so I think that those support groups and those like specialized one-off groups are really where we're coming in to help, like you said, soften that so that we can try and combat that.
Chelsea, how old are your kids? If Can you mention that? Is that okay? Just because
Yeah,
just
of
to give the
course.
audience perspective here.
Yeah, so currently my kids are 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, those are pivotal years, like
Mhm.
massively pivotal years. So,
Yep.
if you could give like one piece of advice to maybe a couple that's just started this geobatch journey, which is a new vocabulary word that I learned today, what would it be? And not just from a place of survival, right? Like you hear often, oh, I'm just surviving. I'm just
Mhm.
attempting to get through the day. But I want you to really kind of hone in on from a place of staying truly connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so intentionality. And
Yes.
I understand that this is like a very broad topic. However, when you're geobatching, if you are not intentional, your marriage is highly likely to die off. My husband and I, every single night, my kids know, my friends know, like everybody knows at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, my husband and I have a FaceTime. That is a non-negotiable unless his work dictates otherwise or if my work does. But if
Sure.
our work is not a factor, then we make it a priority to have that FaceTime phone call. It could be a 10-minute call or it could be an hour call, but you make sure that that is a priority. You make sure that you are intentional about that time. Another thing is on the intentionality side is my husband and I would do virtual dates. So we haven't done it in a while because we've been able to see each other more, but we would do virtual dates once a week when I was home and he was at his house. And we were reading a book together. So we had something to do and talk about. So it was different than our normal FaceTime
Oh,
calls.
yeah.
And we would plan, hey, are we going to eat dinner together tonight? Or do we want to do a Saturday morning coffee session? And it was a date, like my kids knew, hey, this is date time with mom and stepdad, and so we're gonna go leave them be. And so I understand, with kids, like, you can't always do that. Again, mine are a little bit older, so I can be like, hey, go put a movie on and leave us
Yeah.
alone for
Yeah.
a minute. But intentionality, so whatever that might look like for you and your spouse, but you have to be intentional going into this. Otherwise, there's going to be resentment, there's going to be frustration, you're going to be tired, emotions are already going to be peaked. And when you have the intentionality and you feel like your spouse's priority, it softens that so that even if you do have a bad day or a great day or whatever it is, you know that you can go to your spouse that night and tell them, "Hey, I have this phone call at night and I can tell you whatever it is I need to."
I got out of what you talked about intentional rituals, and that is in my coaching practice. Is I share that all the time about
Mhm.
date nights, family check-ins, gratitude practices, all of these things. And I think the biggest thing is we forget, like, I actually did an entire did I do a podcast on this or did I do a workshop on this? Sometimes they just kind of blend in.
Same
But
thing.
I want to, yeah, So I remember whatever one it was, but your values have to be in your calendar,
Mm,
right?
I like that.
For Yeah, they have to be for it to be workable. Like, people think that you can just marry someone and not invest. You
Mhm,
have to invest in your relationship as much as you invest in the stock market or
mhm.
whatever you're investing in. Like, it's just something, it just doesn't go away. Like, and I see this struggling, and then the shift of the dad coming home, and then the piece that's just a sliver that keeps putting in between the relationship. And now it's like this, and now you want to get help, but now it's like you're so far apart from each other. But I love
Mhm.
the intentional ritual pieces, and I always tell my clients a minimum 2 dates a month,
Oh,
minimum,
yeah.
minimum. And connecting, like, you need to
Mhm.
connect with your significant other 90 minutes a week, because don't be like two ships passing in the night. You
Yep.
have to connect. And that means, for those of you that are listening, you were present where your feet are and not having to be on your phone. Or, men, I'm going to call you out, don't be selective listening and watching the game, and your woman's asking you a question and you think she's nagging on you. No, you need to give the time and investment in your
Mhm.
relationship, because you can always record that game. You can watch it a little bit later. Like, honestly, I immensely struggle with that, and it's part of my purpose on what I do. I want to go with this though. Have families in your nonprofit use these type of rituals or traditions kind of as anchors during the separation process?
Oh, yeah. So we've had several people reach out to us once we, talked about the vent container and talked about date nights. And we try to give like tips and tricks and, survival tips on our
Good.
social media,
Good.
things that have worked for us or other people that we've talked to. And so yes, people come to us all the time and they're like, "Oh my gosh," like especially when it comes to parents and kids. That's always our biggest question. How do we keep most of the time dad is the one who's away, but we realize that mom can also be away too. And so the question is, how can we keep dad or mom involved in bedtime stories? And
Mm.
we posed this question and one of our geo-batching families reached out and said, "Hey, there's this amazing app that lets dad read the book and it auto flips so that you're on the phone looking at the screen together and you get to read this story." So for
Oh, that's
younger
beautiful.
kids, like how cool is that? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that wouldn't work for my, almost 12-year-old. He'd be like, "What are we doing?" But
Yeah.
that works for some, and we've had so many families be like, "Wow, that app was so amazing." So we've definitely had people come and reach out to us, which is always so heartwarming to me to know like, "Hey, people are actually looking and seeing this and we're making a difference even if it's one or two people's lives." Like, I'll take it because geobatching is rough.
So you, when you say rough, what has been one of your, so since you've been doing this, what's been the biggest obstacle that you have faced, that the many families that you have helped, that you have faced, that you're like, yeah, we are figuring out a solution, but yet this is a pretty big obstacle. What would you say it is?
So I posted something a while ago of really struggling with, and I sort of touched on it on the military side of like not having the community,
Oh
but
yeah.
on a more like intimate side of it is as a geo-batching spouse, I have friends in Florida and I have friends in Mississippi. But it is really hard to foster friendships and to not feel
Mm.
like an outsider everywhere you go. Because for 1 week, I'm in Mississippi, so I miss out on everything that's happening in Florida for that week that I'm gone. And when I'm in Florida, I miss out on everything and that's happening in Mississippi. And so you're constantly pulled and when I'm with my husband, I'm like, "Oh, this is so great. I love it so much." But then I miss my kids. And then I'm with my
Yeah.
kids and I'm like, "This is
Yeah.
so much fun," but I miss my husband. And so
Yeah.
it's this constant
That's
battle of
interesting.
never feeling settled almost. And not physically settled, but almost like that emotionally settled because you're sort of like, "Well, wait, I'm having a great time in Florida with my friends," but the Mississippi side is like, "Well, they're all going and doing this concert or this event or whatever it is." And so I think that that's been one of the biggest things for me personally to really just kind of be like, "Okay, it's gonna be okay. This is just our season right now."
Mhm.
And all of our friends are so sweet and understanding. Like, they all get it. Nobody has ever made me feel bad or guilty, and that's also part of military life. Like, you have friends kind of all over.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
I love what you said though, because obviously, I divorced parents, and one of the biggest things is when I started dating was that, and the conversation was, look, I'm going to be fully transparent upfront. My kids come first, and I love how you really reassured that earlier, because we already know the statistics on, when parents get divorced, how it plays a toll on the kiddos and stuff like that. And then
Mhm.
one parent is, a certain way to another. It's like adds another dynamic. So it's interesting. And I love that you said that. And I am completely in alignment with that. I want to ask you this. This is one of the things that I stress in my Live to Thrive coaching agency, is like moving from what I call survival to legacy. Family in flight is not just, you don't just meet needs, Chelsea. Like, you're like creating what I call like a legacy of restoring connection with families. And what what legacy do you hope this nonprofit leaves behind?
Oh, that is a great question. I would say, how do I word this? More of like loving relationships, right? I would like for my kids to look back and go, "Wow, mom busted her butt for years and years, but
Yeah,
look at the families. Look at these moments in time where other kids got to go see their parents and have that moment of a loving reunion because Family in Flight was able to provide
yeah,
resources or be able to feel comfortable enough to have the support to go, "Hey, you know, this is what we need, and so, we want to share our story and to help others." And so just that general, I realize it's a very broad word, but just love. I want Family in Flight to be known for how well we loved the community, whether
mm,
that's travel grants, support groups. We talked about with it being in Florida, there's several people that we know in Florida. And one of my board directors, she came up with this idea on our last call that we're going to reach out to all of our Florida people and anyone in Florida who needs help with hurricane assistance, we
wow,
will go physically help because we're all alone, right? Like, I got to board up my windows myself. Luckily, I have amazing neighbors who will help me, but not everybody has that. And
yeah,
so, trying to show the love, be there for
mhm.
them. And I think that if we can do that at the end of the day, then I can go to bed happy knowing we have loved our geo-baching community well.
That's beautifully said. It reminds me of, I was on a podcast, either it was mine or I was on one, and it talked about, um, I think transformation like always comes at a cost, like whether it's financial, emotional, relational, or rational, I should say.
Mhm.
What's been the biggest cost um, of building family in flights? And then the second part to that is, why is it so worth it?
Um, I would say probably emotional, just due to lack of sleep because it's late nights. I work a full-time job, so I'm
Okay.
working 40 hours a week. I have my kids every other week.
Well,
And,
yeah.
so it's a matter of, and then again, the FaceTime phone call is a priority. And so I'm staying up until 11, 12 o'clock at night to work on family and flight stuff. Um, but it's worth it to me because it means so much to hear these other people's stories. And for them, when we did our focus group this past summer, they were like, wow, we had no idea. We only had 7 people on there. And they were like, we had no idea that even this many, 7 people, were in our position. And they were like,
Oh,
wow. We had two that had medically needy children, and they were like connecting on the call, and they had no idea, and so for me, staying up until midnight to help that one connection is worth it.
you talked about their biggest thing has been about community, and I love that. And this again, you probably know the statistic better, but this is what I found. Studies show that military spouses with strong support networks report 30%, 36% higher self or higher life satisfaction. Like, so how does the community shape their journey, and how can other families tap into that? I kind of talked about it earlier, but if you want to elaborate or add anything into that.
Yeah, so, we want community partners. We are actually located in, oh gosh, I think it's 7 states now, meaning we have a military spouse who is like our representative across several states. And to just get the word out, like that is our biggest request at this point in life. Like, obviously, podcasts are great and all of these different things, and donating and sharing our name, but like getting the word out that
Yeah.
geo-baching is a thing, and B, there is an organization that helps with it. And that's where, military or non-military, that's where we can use the support, and that's where we can really start, continue this snowball, I should say, not start it.
What so what's next on the horizon for family in flight? Like, what is next? What is your next big step, would you say, for the future and your mission?
So eventually, within the next 3 years, we'd like to be at Congress. So I've started conversations already this past 2 months or so, this past summer, of having conversations with people who have done this for other issues,
Mhm.
um, and have started the mentorship and the process of starting locally. But the
Yeah.
goal is to be on the Hill talking to them about, hey, how is the military going to support this? Because statistics show that if you have a family who's geo-batching for an extended period of time, that service member has, like, I don't remember the percentage, but it was an extremely high percentage of leaving the military because they need to be with their family and they don't care, and they feel like the military doesn't care. So if the military wants retention, they need to address this issue, and we will be the ones to start that process.
You said that's a pretty high statistic, though, huh?
Mhm. Oh,
That-
yeah.
That's
It's
interesting.
it's I wanna say it was, like, in the 70s,
Wow.
70,
Yeah.
80%
Yeah.
separate, and, I mean, my husband's one of them. He's like, "I probably would have stayed in longer if we could all be together, but we can't, so I'm done."
Yeah, that's unfortunate, and that they
Mhm.
gotta, I don't, I am as civilian as it gets, and I don't know, but I can only imagine though, like, you would think there's an audit system that they do yearly on families and how it affects. Because I'd even be curious to know in the military, like, what exactly is the statistics of divorced families and that are struggling with this. Because, like, honestly, the I mean, I just had a military mom on, and she shared her incredible story, which please go check out.
Yeah.
And now I'm hearing yours as well, and there's definitely some intertwining. I almost think I should have her connect with you on some things, because
Yeah.
this it's ironic how we connected here, and the value, and yeah. Anyway, wow. Thank you, Chelsea. It's been an incredible conversation, an honor. My biggest thing is how I always ask my clients, or not my clients, but individuals that come on to my podcast, is how are you providing value? And you are making such an impact. I mean, you got some huge, strong goals ahead of you. And I believe in that. And I believe that the change that you're making is truly going to happen, because your story is honestly a living example of that. And I mean, you're a mom, you're working a full-time job, you got this business, you're fueled by your vision, you're fueled by your heart, and you lead by example. And kudos to you, and to everybody
Thank
that's
you.
involved. Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Anything that you would like to share right now, as far as your socials, how they can get
Yeah.
hold of you, specific email, website, any promote, anything, go right ahead.
Yeah, so you can find us on all social media. So our handle is Family in Flight across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, what is it? X now maybe or whatever it's called. And
Yeah.
if you want to reach out to us directly, if you need support, if you want to share your story, if you know somebody, or hey, if you just want to volunteer, military or not, we are here for that, all of it. And you can reach us at hello@familyinflight.org and it'll come directly to me. And then we can start whatever conversation you guys are needing to have. I talk often with people on email about their geo-baching uh, stuff. And then the other thing too is if you need support, the first Wednesday of every month, we have our virtual support group. You can reach out to us at that same email, hello@familyinflight.org, and we can send you the link and you can join us and we would love to meet with you.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And Chelsea, thank you so much for being part of the podcast today of Framing
Yeah.
the Heights. And you are obviously making a difference. And don't stop fighting and keep going. And we appreciate it.
Thank
Uh,
you so much.
you're welcome. And as always, 1% better in mind, body, and soul. And always stay flexed. Come on, Chelsea, get them up. Get them up. Yes. All right, Chelsea, take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.